an intro video? That's gangster. What's up, Bobby?
We live? We gonna do it live?
We're live.
Sweet.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What's up, Dan?
Oh, hello, Bobby. How we doing?
Great, man. Beautiful day. I just got back from Cabo.
Oh yeah, how was Cabo?
Yeah. The unplug.
The
It was
unplug.
amazing, man. It was amazing. I have 4 kids, so I got away without the wife or without the kids. With the wife, it was like, oh,
Without the one. Did you get in trouble?
unplug, unplug. Yeah, just me. No. Me and the wife had a little weekend away in Cabo. It's a great time of year to get out there.
It's awesome. Yeah, and the weather has been super wonderful in Southern California. I know it's been very tough for the rest of the country, but it
Yeah.
is
Sorry,
70
everybody.
degrees in this area,
Yeah.
so I can't complain.
No.
Well, thank you for joining us, everybody. Start with maybe some introductions. I'm Daniel Tejada. I'm the Chief Learning Officer, one of the founders of Straight Up Growth, an Amazon growth marketing agency where we sell almost $1 billion a year. So Bezos, Port Bezos, as we like to say. Bobby, why don't you introduce yourself to the folks?
Yeah, Bobby Dietz, co-founder of Attention Agency. We're a digital marketing agency and message agency. We work with a lot of mid-market brands, 10 million to 300 million in revenue to drive sales on site.
Not too shabby. Well, excited for everyone joining in here today. We're excited to chat through what we've seen on the success side of things for things beyond search, right? Search is obviously a really big sort of offensive lineman when it comes to e-commerce in general, right? But we're going to chat through just new things that are coming down, right? What strategies are people doing both on marketplace and off of marketplace as well? And we've got some new features, things like that. Before we jump into some of our slides here, Bobby, how are you feeling about 2025 on the e-com side of things right now?
I'm feeling good, man. Things are always changing in our industry, but we're scaling brands now more than ever. It's interesting. For a minute there, a lot of people were trying to chase the COVID strategies and numbers, and not that they're not doing that now, but there's more of a tolerance for, building a marketing funnel and retargeting to people, staying in front of them, and a higher level of tolerance for multi-touch across multiple channels. Like, we have more brands now that are diversified out of Meta exclusively than ever, going into YouTube and of course search and shopping, but connected TV. And, it's cool. It's a great time to be marketing. And we're still seeing a lot of success for brands that are advertising across all those channels. Retail too, maybe more now than ever as well. We're seeing brands pushing into retail and driving campaigns to sell through and it being effective. And, we've done a lot of holdout tests over the last year, and that seems to be doing really well too. So, consumer spending is definitely happening, regardless of what anyone tells you. The credit cards are out of their wallet.
That's awesome. It's interesting. You mentioned more of your clients kind of moving away from that into more full funnel type of activities. What percentage would you say of like clients are starting to do that? Is it a significant shift? Is it kind of a slow burn of brands moving?
Yeah, I mean, once you're getting to 30 million in revenue, you really need to be outside of just Meta. We do come across brands that are doing 50 million, whatever, that are only in Meta, but the CPMs are so much lower outside. I hate to, disparage the Meta gods, and they put a kink at some of my clients, but the truth is that the CPMs are so much lower on things like YouTube, and you can scale there because those users drive lift across the entire funnel so well. So it's probably a good response, I guess.
Yeah, no, I like that. How much?
Amazon too. Like but when we're pushing a lot of spend on channels that are, awareness very top of funnel, like YouTube as an example, again, we see tremendous lift on Amazon too. And I think it takes the right kind of brand owner to tolerate that. Click attributed ROAS in YouTube is better than it was a year ago. It's certainly better than it was 3 years ago. Shorts has helped a lot, but it's still not like a click farm like Meta. I mean, when's the last time you really clicked on a YouTube ad? And we're
Right.
still driving in-platform attributed ROAS, but the founders are business leaders that understand the overall lift are really the ones that see the most success, because you might see a video on YouTube, an ad on YouTube, and there's good salience there, but you're going to go to your preferred channel, which is Amazon, to buy that. So if you're looking at it right, you say, okay, yeah, in platforms, whatever, 2x or 1x or 4x or whatever, regardless of what it is. But what's the overall lift here on Amazon? And my overall sales compared to what I'm spending, those numbers are getting really good.
Oh, and I think you really hit the nail on the head there. I'm seeing the same thing on the Amazon front, right? I think everyone now advertises on search, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, that the available inventory is pretty much stretched out there, right? Amazon already has the majority of customers in the US like that are going to be using a computer, right? Already exists there. They're not really getting customers to create more searches. And so the next kind of iteration of brands that are really winning are brands that are thinking about that full funnel, right? Brands that are thinking about DSP. Even with Amazon's DSP platform, you can go more there are different ways of chopping it up, right? Like, so things like high ROAS segments, viewed but not purchased, right? Or cross promotion into existing items, right? Acquisition's expensive in certain categories, but once you've already sold into that customer, why not try to squeeze more dollars out of them, right?
Yeah, totally.
A lot of consumables.
We see the big problem comes too with us, if, like, for when we're buying traffic on Mountain and we go and audit somebody's account, like, you really just have to remove past purchasers, because the lift comes across in other channels. And if you see a CTV ad, you go to the website, you might not buy right then, but you're engaged. You're going to retarget to you. The same thing you're going to do on Amazon,
Yep.
and staying in front of them at that point is really the biggest part of it. But so many channels are really just need to be focused on top of funnel, net new eyeballs. But again, you have to have the perspective of the whole funnel, and it takes time. Like we have a client that's rather large scale. They sell coffee. It takes 26 days to sell on Google. 8-9 touches. That's just Google. It's probably twice that. 18 on Meta. So it's also a process, and the brands that I think we're seeing do the best have this longer term perspective. You can't go into something for top of funnel like CTV and YouTube. While you will see in platform performance, you can't expect that it's like last click Meta. The affiliate days are over. You need to build a brand. Those are the companies that have been hit the hardest, at least in terms of like their ability to drive consistent sales at satisfactory returns, are the ones that haven't built a brand. They're not investing in long-term high quality assets that drive salience and separate them from the competition. So
I think that's a huge point there. And I think even I know, like, from the Amazon side of things, they are trying to make it easier to understand some of these like the implications of like this long-term funnel, right? There's actually a company I chatted with recently for streaming TV video that has partnered with in-store retail to track the impact of their streaming TV video ads against sales done in store at like Whole Foods and Albertsons and all that fun stuff, right? And it's like these are capabilities that are pretty massive, right? And really, like you said, we know that there is an impact. A lot of the times it's just we can't actually measure it, right? And so the better we are at actually measuring it, as these platforms allow us to start opening up there, that's been really, really fruitful for driving, getting brands to spend dollars in the right places, right, and continue to spend dollars in the right places.
The data limitations and knowledge it's just tough. I mean, it's just tough. We usually when we're working with brands that are trying to sell in store, we're doing holdout tests, Georgia versus Florida or whatever, and doing large campaigns within these areas to determine effectiveness, and then proving it out and then scaling it across the country to all their locations if it's effective, which it usually is. And if you don't have tools to track, which they can be rather expensive, I suspect that the tools you're talking about are not cheap, but sometimes they can pay for themselves if you just know, hey, this marketing isn't working or this marketing is working.
Right.
Makes everything a lot easier to invest
instead of blindly firing off. I know we have a couple slides here we both put together on some new things happening. I'm going to go ahead and just share my screen. Let's do this. All right. I don't have my other monitor today, Bobby, so you're going to have to let me know if it's be okay. Sick. Okay. Just kind of on the topic of what I saw, what we were just chatting about, in regards to like opening up more data. I think a couple things that Amazon's announced this year and some things we're seeing on beta really come within Amazon's AMC and Amazon's DSP platform that are pretty interesting. So on the AMC side of things, they are opening up quite a few things. They're opening up a longer look back window in terms of customer sales. So being able to actually create like 5-year look back windows for things like storefronts, for customer lifetime value data, which is pretty fun. They're also opening up things like customer journey and touch points. So it's in beta right now, but essentially you can literally follow how a customer, or we can follow a full customer funnel essentially. So if we look here, we can see everything from customers that found us via search, right? Did they go to the brand store? Were we added to a cart, right? Were we actually dropping off or purchasing? And so this actually allows us to understand at what steps in the Amazon's customer journey are customers falling off, right? Or what sequence of steps are allowing us to drive the highest number of customers, and particularly, right, we obviously care about repeat customers a lot as well. So pretty interesting things that we're starting to see kind of across the board from Amazon. I think Amazon's read the writing on the wall in the sense of DSP is really where we're going to start seeing, I think, the biggest investment dollars over time there. They also even started to open up essentially a publisher network. So it's not quite fully built out yet, but they announced it at CES this year, where essentially Amazon's going to allow other websites to serve ads on their own site using Amazon's technology, right, in like a search fashion. So I'm pretty curious to see how that plays out. But I have a feeling Amazon's goal is, we're trying to just follow that customer wherever we can, right? Like you mentioned. And
Yeah.
At the end of the day, there's a good chance you're going to go to Amazon, but customers shop in a lot of different places, right? Even different marketplaces, their own.com. So all that stuff.
Yeah, this is a great funnel too. I mean, we look at this. I look at this anyway. And it's like, okay, where do I not spend my money?
Right.
Like most of our job is figuring out what does not work.
Right.
Yeah. Avoid wasting money in that place, or if you have to spend some money there, controlling the cost. I mean, I can't tell you how many accounts we've looked at that overspend on brand or something. Our side is a little different. You guys do past purchaser marketing. A lot of what we do is, avoids that 5% of the budget maybe, because we're trying to soak up that money either through email or a channel like Amazon.
Yep.
So, we're so focused on the top of the funnel. And you mentioned LTV, and I'm curious, like, I think one of the things that has been more limiting for many of the contacts or like clients that we work with or prospects that we talk to is just not understanding their LTV to CAC ratio and what they can tolerate for, like where can, if we triple your budget, where can new customer CAC go to?
Yeah. No, I think
it can go up. And knowing those numbers and how long, right? You can't just say LTV to CAC, oh, what was 3 to 1? Yeah, but what time frame? Is that
right.
12 months? You don't want to wait that long to be profitable. I mean, what's your 6-month LTV to CAC? If it's 5 to 1, let's scale to the moon. Right. Most people don't really, it seems like getting a grip on those numbers and having them really ironed out while you're scaling or before you approve an increase in spend is going to help dramatically with not just your sanity, but the profitability.
I think that part's massive. Like you mentioned, like, I can't tell you how many brands I've worked with that are overspending. They're seeing a like big influx of acquisition, and they're like, yeah, don't worry, we're all good. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait, why hasn't our revenue kicked back in yet? Right? Like, why are we not profitable yet? And at the end of the day, it's like, you need to make sure you understand, like, what is that cycle, right? There are things you can do to impact it, right? You may have customers that are not reordering for 6 months, but really they should be ordering every 2 months, right? And so maybe it does make sense to engage those shoppers with like a DSP, like retargeting type of campaign, right? But unless we're diligent about looking at that information, right, we we tend to see brands make some more drastic decisions, right? When it doesn't have to be, as long as they're smart about like understanding the funnel, optimizing that funnel, continually. And then the scale piece is huge, right? Anytime I show a brand, an opportunity of like, here's where we're underspending, I usually increase the CAC conservatively, as a just to kind of protect myself there, right? Because
Yeah.
I know if I'm spending more, there's a good chance it's going to cost more, right?
Yeah.
Because
No
there's
doubt.
so much supply at the end of the day.
Yeah. No doubt.
But yeah, really fun information we're seeing with Amazon, right? Things like new customers. This is data we couldn't necessarily see in the past, right? I could break this down by year, month, week. We can see information on like your repeat customers and consumers, and how is that revenue changing over time, right? Just seems basic, but information that Amazon has not had for years, and now just allows us to make better and better decisions as marketers.
So when you're looking at this data too, I suspect that the SKUs would or type of product would impact these numbers.
100%.
If there's a particular product, like you talked about before, let's say, so laundry detergent, maybe I buy every 4 months, whereas a supplement I might buy every 30 days. The subscription timeframes are, or maybe that's a product that, like a hair dryer, that I really just need to buy once every year, or 2 years, or 3 years, or something. When you're looking at this data, I suspect you'll filter out some of those products that have very different characteristics.
100%. Yeah, if you can segment the view, that's ideal. There's also another area Amazon has, like Amazon brand metrics, where you can actually view some of these type of insights and actually get comparison data to your category or your subcategory, right? So you can actually compare yourselves against like the median and top tier cohorts of your category. So, or your subcategory, which I find useful, obviously, to see how we're doing against competitors.
I would add to that from our side anyway, like on the let's just call it Meta and Google Ads. Like we talk to a lot of business leaders that are looking very closely at competitors and want to know why they can't do or aren't doing when they come in. It's like, well, most of the, just for everybody listening, like most of the time, the numbers are different in the back end than you think. It does, they're scaling to the moon. Yeah, but they're comfortable with a ton of float, and the ROAS is 0.5, and CAC is tolerance is $150 when you're 65, right? So like you really need to look at the data as best you can, or talk to an expert that has done this stuff a lot. They'll tell you more than likely, okay, well, yeah, they're spending this much, but their conversion rate, it cannot be 6x yours. So they're probably running at a loss to try and get scale and bring subscribership up. It's not always what it seems.
And sometimes, look, there's a reason, right? Like some brands may be like, look, if I spend enough, if I hit enough new customers in, and I can make my money off my repeats, it's fine, right? But you just have to have a game
for sure. We've done it many times to dramatic levels of scale to great success and fanfare. I mean, I think it's like, just because you see something happening, don't think that it applies to you, because your goals might be different. You want to grow profitably. That's a lot different than having venture back and being really comfortable with float, because you can raise more money to get to the next phase. Not every brand, or you don't have enough money to invest in the amount of creative that they do. So there's limitations. And
that cash flow is key there for sure.
Exactly.
You put together some stuff on connected TV as well. A lot about this stuff.
Really a lot of this has to do with our focus on prospecting in connected TV. 60-70% of the budget, that probably could even increase. It's like any kind of cart abandoners really need their own retargeting funnel. I think it's like everything that's engaged needs its own funnel. And there's good tracking through something like connected TV still. Like IP tracking is pretty good. And we use Mountain a lot. There's various providers, but they do a pretty good job of filtering. And we see a pretty substantial amount of lift to other channels because of something like connected TV. So when you look at like retargeting, you don't have to have too much spend in retargeting in connected TV, because it's going to be soaked up through other channels as well. And we've done pretty well scaling brands on connected TV to a pretty large degree, because they are able to bring in new customers, new eyeballs very consistently. And, you get back in front of people, you stay in front of people, you reintroduce new products, but they're very good for new customer eyeballs. And there's not a whole heck of a lot of overlap between these channels. I mean, the buyers on CTV are different than the buyers that are on YouTube and search and shopping and maybe on Meta and Twitter. There's certainly some overlap, but you bring new people into the funnel that behave differently, buy differently. And overall, it just seems to be a very solid way to drive campaigns that convert consistently across all the channels. And we can track all this stuff pretty well. We've got ways of tracking with custom conversions in something like Meta, where we can engage users with Meta ads and then follow their behavior around the internet. If they re-engage or come back to the site through email or through Google ads or YouTube ads or, wherever, Klaviyo, wherever it might be. And that'll help us understand, for buying traffic in Meta, are these clicks that we're driving valuable because they're coming back to the site in other ways? And we've found that traffic coming through connected TV and YouTube does end up being really valuable in terms of driving conversions, because they're qualified clicks. Even if they're, engaged audiences, which we try to limit, they're still very qualified. There's something about seeing an ad on TV that gets people really engaged and separates them from, separates the brand from others. Something about the audio on makes it really powerful. People are going to hear this ad. That alone, a lot of ads are listened to without audio. So maybe off topic for the slide and rambling.
No, but that's awesome. No, it's interesting to hear that for sure. Would you say from a creative standpoint, you mentioned the buyers are different on the various different mediums there. Do you have a different type of advertisement that you're looking for something like connected TV versus like YouTube?
Yeah, those are the barriers. I really think that like the traffic on something like YouTube is so cost effective, it's wild. I mean, Shorts is crazy cheap. And you should have seen it this time last year, man. It was crazy. Google's so happy to have a doom scrolling component that they offer. Finally, they tried and finally have it. They're just giving the traffic away. So the CPMs are low on that. They're not quite as low on CTV, but the barrier getting into those channels is the having the right creative. And it's really hard to make creative that is even acceptable to something like connected TV because of the quality needed. And YouTube as well still has this kind of in-studio legacy type of commercial that seems to do really well. Shorts has incorporated more of a UGC component, but
okay,
it's not the budgets. It's really like the type of creative. You have to have the right kind of creative on those channels, and that requires investment, which is risk. And then you have to spend on this creative to figure out the audiences that are working, and then target those audiences and test hooks. And again, we're talking about multiple months to get a really optimized campaign that drives results. So it's probably risk tolerance, investment, being comfortable investing in the right kind of creative and giving it time.
What, from your side of things, what size do brands have to be thinking about a connected TV strategy?
Yeah, I would say at a minimum, you probably want to be spending 200 on Meta and 200, maybe 150, 100 on Google. And then you can start incorporating. I mean, just from our side, I would not launch a connected TV campaign as a startup, just as an example. You need to spend enough money to get statistical significance on that platform. But from a revenue standpoint, we don't really see a lot of brands doing that until they're at 20 million, 30 million. Then we start getting into connected TV. Unless it's like a retail push and they're not really selling direct to consumer.
Sure.
And we're going specific markets. We've done that rather successfully. But again, the CPMs are a little bit higher, right?
Yeah. That's cool. No, that totally makes sense. Did you want to go through any of these other slides here specifically?
Oh, these are case studies about how great we are.
Nice.
I'm sure
They are great
with that stuff.
Nice.
Have you guys? Some of our testing strategies might be interesting to talk about. A lot of I think, again, a lot of what these channels are about is figuring out what does not work. And maybe a good takeaway for people listening is, if you're running campaigns on these channels and they're not successful, quote unquote, the real question you need to be asking yourself or your agency is what they've learned. Because if they haven't been able to tell you what is and is not working, it's definitely not, it doesn't have anything to do with the ads. It has to do with the structure. What has been tested? Are you testing hooks? Are you testing titles? Are you testing the offer? But even landing pages, whatever it might be. For us, it leans more towards the content and the audiences and the targeting keywords. But if you're not, if you haven't figured out what's not working and eliminated it, that's the reason. I can't tell you how many times we've taken accounts over, they're spending or tried to spend dramatically, have a really bad taste in their mouth because of results they received on YouTube ads or connected TV. And you go and look, and there was no real optimizations made. And most of the time that probably has to do with, unfortunately, Google telling them that, let the AI do its thing. It's really much, much more complicated than that in terms of how to optimize the campaigns. But we've turned accounts around in literally like 2 weeks, completely overhaul, cut their CPA by 2/3 because we structure the account right. And it's usually not the creative, but because agencies like us that don't do creative are able to say, oh, we need more creative, they just keep throwing creative into the flywheel, hoping that it's going to make a difference. And it's not. It's because it's easy for them to not do the work. On the variations we're creating, there's 150 different ad variations. That's so much work, but it's so easy to just say, well, we need new creative. But I think one of the reasons our clients like us is because we're able to, figure out how to make the asset effective. That's so important. You spend a bunch of money on these assets from creative agencies or your team internally, and we're going to do everything we can to try and figure out how to make it work. And this testing system has a lot to do with our way of trying to figure out how to squeeze every drop out of the lemon that we can.
I think that's just so huge. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to brands, about Amazon's DSP platform, for example. And they're like, oh, we tried it once, it doesn't work, right? It doesn't work for us. And whenever I ask why, they almost never have an actual answer, right? It's always like, oh, the ROAS wasn't there, we didn't get the return. But no one ever talks about what they learned, right? Like how they actually worked towards trying to fix it, right? For whatever reason, a lot of brands, for example, like with Amazon DSP, don't use a custom creative. I can't tell you how many times I, just like reading the news on some random website, and I get served Amazon DSP advertisements all the time, and I see ones without custom creatives. Honestly, 90% of the time, they don't even have one, right? And it's such a lazy thing that literally doubles your ROAS,
right?
Like overnight, right? It's huge, I think, to think about this from the standpoint that you're thinking about, like of what went wrong, right? Because it's not always just like the product, right? It's not always just the creative, like you mentioned. There are things like even the promotion, right? A little thing like who are you serving your audience to? Like maybe they need a promotion, right? Some customers need a coupon, right? Some customers don't. Some customers care more about the value. But unless we're like thinking about that and have some sort of process for going through that review, through that optimization, right, we're going to be missing out on dollars. And brands like you mentioned, throw a lot of money at these things, right? And so if you're running this test, you do want to understand, like, why didn't it work? If it didn't work, that's okay, but let's figure out why it's not working so this doesn't happen again, right? And so we can tweak this for the future.
Yeah, and how does it impact everything else you do? I mean, if we uncover that, vegans do really well, we can pass that on to everybody else in the ecosystem. Right. Email can start talking about that. Amazon can start incorporating that into what they're doing. There's so many learnings that have ripple effects everywhere else. And unless you're figuring out what does and does not work, it is not nearly as effective as it can be. And again, say if you have the same story as me, it's like, oh, it didn't work for us, we've written it off. It's like, man, that's a shame.
Exactly. But it works for other clients, right? And so if it can work for other people, right? Why can't it work for you guys at the end of the day?
That's right. That's right. If you have all the tools at your disposal, for sure. Yes.
Do you want to go through any of this YouTube strategy?
I think that probably one of the things to talk about on the YouTube side we have already is it's really about, trying to figure out why something works and, what audiences are working. And, we have unique ways of testing on other channels like Meta as well, but we do the same thing here. There's a lot of hook testing, which is a ton of work to upload all this stuff for relatively small amounts of spend because you're getting statistical significance rather quickly relative to other channels because the cost per views are much lower. But we're really trying to figure out not just which assets work, but which audiences, and then which hooks within which audience. So there's layers of testing that takes time to figure out. And once you have answers about, hey, business travelers work really well. Okay, well, let's inform the creative agency about that. So they can at least create a couple variations for us about business travelers for this product. They don't have to disrupt their entire strategy and their ideas and creative process, but just work those in. We found one of our testing strategies found that we have a candle company we work with that's rather large, and they have collections that they release every season. Okay. And every season there's 50 there's a ton of variations, and it's the most seasonal business ever. Like, when it's time for Christmas, no one's buying the pumpkin spice latte anymore. It's like, right. No one's buying it. And you're doing it a couple months ahead of time, but they release these, and some of the assets we had launched were the most successful engaged videos maybe we'd ever seen. I mean, it was crazy engagement, but no one was buying. And when we took those assets out of the retargeting funnel and we switched them with assets that talked about a single candle, that everything took off.
Yeah.
Because there's analysis paralysis, but it's like, hey, I was really interested in buying. I just couldn't figure out which one. My kid was screaming at me. I had to go, whatever. But then when I came back and I said, hey, this is the best candle this season of the collection, they remembered that it was time to buy. They bought because it was much easier, went right to the PDP and purchase. That's the kind of thing. It's like, what have you learned about? Because forcing the asset could have very easily said, oh, these assets don't work. It's like, get me some new creative. But trying to use the psychographics that might be impacting the purchase behavior and coming up with things to test that might adjust the performance. That's really what it takes. What have you learned is kind of, again.
That's so interesting. Like, I know we had I had a case one time with one of our brands that we were crushing it from a new customer acquisition standpoint. My repeat purchase rate was just way too low, right? So I was in the energy, drink mix space, super high volume, super high demand, acquisition costs are expensive. And so repeat revenue is really important, right? And so what we were finding was the customers that were buying from us and continuing to purchase from us, like, so if they bought at least twice, they would purchase about 12 times from us in a year, right, on average. But customers that were purchasing once, we had such a huge, massive drop off, right? So we were looking at like AMC data to figure that out. We then literally overlaid like something simple like Amazon DSP retargeting customers that have purchased from us but haven't purchased from us in the last 60 days, right? We implemented that for a few months, right? Our repeat purchase rate went from 30% to 50%, like almost overnight.
Huge.
Right? There, and it's not rocket science, right? It's a little easy peasy thing, but I ended up making the brand, a lot more money there. And so those little tweaks are important, right? It's not just about the top line, rev and spend numbers, right? Some of the
right.
Some of this work
you have to be determined to figure out how to make it work.
Exactly.
That's the difference. And coming to the table with new findings or things to test that can actually make a difference, and not phoning it in and saying, oh, we need new creative, or this isn't working, develop a different offer.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's not always the like there are times where, yes, on the rarest of occasions, honestly, I think it is the product that you're selling, right? But
yeah,
it's not that high. Like, people are pretty open to buying products. Like
they are.
If you can just take the right steps, right? Fix your funnels, and eventually you bring them in.
That's right.
Well, awesome, Bobby. Anything else before we let people go here today?
No, I just, come hit me up if you want some help with paid media on, Meta, Google, TikTok. We're very happy to help with that. Our agency works with a lot of D2C brands and brands in retail in the mid market, again, somewhere between 10 and 200 million in gross sales is our numbers. We have brands bigger than that, but that's kind of our sweet spot. And we're very good at reducing CAC and scaling. So if those are two things that are interesting, which I'm sure they are, I can wow you with great case studies. So hit me up.
Yeah, Bobby definitely knows his stuff, and I
You
am
too, man. Come on.
the prince of Amazon. What are you gonna do? We do almost $1 billion a year. We have a very interesting approach to what we do, but we're good at it. Don't have to advertise for a reason. So
There you go.
always a good time, Bobby.
All right.
And
Thanks,
I'll let
Dan.
everyone know. Peace.